So you gave us some great information on beneficiary entitling. Could you tell me a little bit more about the difference between a TOD, transfer on death account, and an IRA account in naming beneficiaries?
Absolutely. So a TOD account is an account which is in regular title, meaning it's not already in a trust. So with an IRA or Roth IRA, technically that's in a retirement trust. So the beneficiary designation works differently, where a TOD account is a non-trustee account, but by using TOD, you avoid probate.
Great. So can you tell me, when someone dies with an IRA and it goes on to a beneficiary, how do the RMDs work?
So the RMDs, continue for the IRA holder in a normal fashion, but if you name a beneficiary who is more than 10 years younger, it actually impacts the RMD schedule and stretches it out further. So we always want to look carefully at the beneficiary designations and see if it makes sense potentially to split the IRA into multiple IRAs with different beneficiaries to achieve different outcomes in terms of the required minimum distribution that the IRS requires you to take. And when I talk about RMD, it's something I'm familiar with, but you may not be. What RMD is essentially that the IRS has given us a loan on taxes because we've not paid taxes on the account. And so when you reach age 70 and a half, the IRS has a formula by which they want money coming out of the account so they can get their tax money back. And so at age 70 and a half, you have to take the money within the required timeframes, or the tax penalty is 50%, which is pretty egregious.
Wow, yeah, it is. So you mentioned something called stretching. I've heard of the term stretch IRA. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Yes, absolutely. So what's interesting with an IRA is if you name, for instance, a great-grandchild as the beneficiary on the IRA, and you could also name a child of yours and a great-grandchild as well, the actual RMD schedule would then stretch out over the great-grandchild's life, which leaves incredible compounding ability with the IRA, because obviously the quicker we have to pull it out, the less of the tax-free compounding that we're able to take advantage of.
Great info. Thank you again for clarifying that for us.
So another thing to touch on while we're into this that's really important is that with an IRA, you always want to have a beneficiary and the cast of characters. So you can name a primary beneficiary, secondary beneficiary, and fallback beneficiaries. And so what we like to look at sometimes is if a client has an IRA, and let's say it's a large IRA, and they want the money to go to their kids, but they also want it to go to charity. If they name the whole cast of characters up front in terms of the beneficiary designations, then what happens is if a child looks at it and says, my mom died of cancer and I really don't need this money, I would rather have it go to the Cancer Society, they can actually disclaim it and say, I don't want it to go to me. And if the Cancer Society is named as a beneficiary on the IRA, then it would automatically go to them tax-free. So what we always say is, don't waste the opportunity to name beneficiaries on IRA accounts, and do thoughtful planning, because sometimes we want to split IRAs. So some's going to the spouse, some's going to the child, some may be going to a grandchild for education purposes, always with thoughtful contingent beneficiaries.
That's great. And also, to expand on that, you can do your required minimum distributions directly to charities as well. So you don't even have to do it at death.
Yes, and that's a unique thing that seems to not be permanently sanctioned in the tax code. So it's almost renewed on a year-by-year basis. But what's very helpful is if you name the beneficiary directly on an IRA under the new tax code, for a single person, the standard deduction is $12,000. For a married couple, the standard deduction is now $24,000. So what that means is if you were going to take your IRA distribution of $12,000 and then you were going to personally write a check to charity, you wouldn't really get the deduction because your standard deduction is $24,000, you wouldn't qualify. Instead, if you direct the money directly from the IRA to the charity, it's a complete win-win because the charity gets the money and it doesn't impact your personal taxes.
Fantastic. That's great.
Well,
Well,
thank you.
thanks for your answers on this. We'll be back with more.
Great. Thank you.